So when you're just first starting out to paint in watercolor, painting some fruit is a really great practice. Fruit offers beautiful, rich color, and then it has this kind of three-dimensionality. You can use apples, like peppers, fruit, or vegetables. I have some pears in here. So very simple forms, and it will allow you to practice in color. So I'm just going to start with an apple. You may paint in watercolor without drawing, or you may also draw out your apple to help you. I'm going to just make it kind of big, to help you keep the form. Maybe I will add a little leaf to my One of the most important practices that you need to master is to be able to leave the light, the white of the paper, wherever you want the highlight to be. So like right here is going to be a highlight in my apple. So I'm going to leave this unpainted for the beginning. The watercolor from light to dark. So I'm going to start kind of like in this middle tone for this apple because I really want to have some really beautiful transitions of color. You already heard me talk about warm and cool when I was making the washes. I really love exploring the relationship of warm and cool in color. So here I put some warmer red and some cooler red by adding a little bit more of a violet color to it. You can make the red warmer by adding a little bit of orange. Here I'm using a very bright color. You can make it lighter, or actually my apple kind of changes in color here, so I'm going to feed in a little bit of yellow. I'm going to let this yellow come through around, but make it a little bit lighter, as you saw, because right here is also a little bit of a lighter area of the apple, and then bring it around like this. Actually, I'm just going to paint right over the stem because the stem is going to be darker. So, but right here, I really want some light at the top of the apple, right here. So I'm going to continue to feed the color as I move along, but I'm going to change my color a little bit as well. So if you add just a tiny bit of green, oops, that was a lot of green, but if I add a little bit of green into my red, I'm going to get these beautiful dark, almost burgundy kind of colors. I have pretty strong light here right now, so there's bright lights and deep shadows in my apple because the light is coming from the window. In order to create those darker tones, I added some green to my to the red. Oh, look what I did. I just painted over my highlight. So no problem. I'm going to lift it right off. The highlight on this apple is not super shiny, so it's not perfectly white. It's kind of like a pinkish color anyway, so that works out pretty good. And I'm going to keep the colors really soft like that, blending together. Except for the highlight. I'm going to make that a little more crisp and precise. So I'm feeding lots of color, and I'm going to add again a little bit of green to my color. To bring in some of those shadow colors, but also there's a little bit of a change in the shade of the apple. A little bit of an orangey tint in the bottom. I guess the top was warmed by the sun and the bottom didn't get as much sun, so the color kind of changes. It's almost a little bit greenish, so I'm going to add the green and orange into the lower part and let it sort of blend, because that's a color change in the apple. It's not like a value, but an actual color change. And then as I get lower, I'm going to add a bit more green to make my color a bit darker. And the bottom of the apple has that interesting shape. Maybe I will add a bit more yellow here on the side. And then some color accumulated at the bottom, so I'm just gonna drive my brush and pick up some of the extra color that flowed down. So you can already see how my apple is forming, but I do have some blooms in here and some other areas that maybe are a little bit off. But my apple does have a ridge. You can see this like ridge on it, right, that I was painting. And I do want to make this area a bit stronger. You can also use maybe a little bit of brighter green. And here's what you can do. Remember the wash that we made from going from darker to lighter? So I put down some color. However, I want the edge to be softened. So I just take a wet brush and allow that color to flow into that area. So I can keep this side a hard edge, but I can make the other side really soft. Also, as I showed you when we were doing the washes, if you wanted to lift, for example, grab a different brush, the tip here, and make this a brighter, typically I wouldn't in my painting, but just to show you, let's say your colors kind of flowed together and you want to lift a little bit of the color up here. You can use a flat brush and make your make that edge a little bit more defined. And on my apple, as I mentioned, there are these ridges, so I'm even going to go in a little bit because the apple is not all smooth. It has these variations as it goes around. My apple also has a little bit of this highlight at the edge, so I'm going to lift this up as well. So at this point, even if I'm not completely satisfied with this painting, I'm gonna let this layer of paint dry rather than try to repaint certain areas. But if I wanted to add more color, I can do this later when this first layer dries. Okay, so I'm gonna let it dry. So now that this part dried or partially dried, it's not completely dry, I'm going to come in to add a little bit of a stem here, and I'm going to start again with a lighter color and then add a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to add the purple into my brown here. And I'm probably also going to add a little bit more green, and if you want, you can paint the sleeve. I'm going to do it soft. Add a little bit of green. A little bit of blue into my green. And since the apple has been off the tree, the leaf is not really perfect anymore. Also, I could wet an area and add a little bit of a shadow. You can also see that little bits of these colors. For example, the purple is bringing out the yellow in the orange, in the apple, and the green is bringing out the red in the apple. So colors really play off of each other. And here I'm going to make just a little bit of a harder edge in there. But again, I'm going to use a wet brush and just soften it like that. just giving it a little bit more of an intense color.